Good evening, and thank you for joining me. Tonight's message I've entitled, The Message of an Exodus. In the book of Exodus, we see three main characters stand out in the first few chapters: God, Moses, and the Pharaoh. God used Moses, an insider, someone who grew up in the Egyptian courts and education, to get close to Pharaoh. In Exodus chapter 11, verse 3, we read that Moses himself was highly regarded in Egypt by Pharaoh's officials and by the people. Highly regarded, respected, influential was Moses. Moses, whose name means to draw out, would have been a reminder to the people of his providential past, how his life was spared by the Nile, how he was saved by the Pharaoh's daughter. A heroic tale that in all probability may have been seen through the lens of the Egyptian religious system, viewing Moses as a gift of the Nile, and therefore a gift of the gods. Moses, the gift that was given to Pharaoh's daughter, the gift that she drew out of the water. The people and the officials of Pharaoh knew Moses, and they knew his story. His name was a reminder of his providential past. He was highly regarded, respected, and influential. This was his relationship with the Egyptians. A man of myth, a man of legend, a man of story, favored by the gods. But he came claiming one God above all the others. The God Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, which the Pharaoh, despite all of the evidence, refused to believe and submit to. Moses was sent by Yahweh with a message to deliver. Sent by Yahweh to deliver a message to the Pharaoh, the message of an exodus, bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, leading them to Yahweh to worship. There's a relationship between the Pharaoh and Moses. As difficult as it might be to untangle, we see a relationship between the Pharaoh and Moses. It appears to be one of a deep closeness, as a uncle and a nephew, though filled with strain and much tension. We see Pharaoh as a nationalist, a racist, grown up to uphold certain beliefs and ideologies. He holds to the ways of Egypt and holds those ways to be divine. And everything that is not strictly Egyptian is rubbish. Have you ever butted heads with a family member or family members who hold to certain beliefs different from you? Have you ever had those conversations, those tense and uncomfortable conversations with a family member who might hold to certain beliefs different than yours? Maybe it is politics or religion. Pharaoh sees Moses this way. They butt heads. Pharaoh sees Moses as a traitor, siding with the slaves, siding with the Israelites. He sees Moses as a betrayer, a betrayal of all things purely Egyptian, a betrayer to Egypt. Uncle Moses, the wayward thinking Egyptian Israelite sympathizer. And as strained and torn a relationship that it might have been between Moses and Pharaoh, we still see that there is a level of respect and care and deep concern. A deep concern that can be seen. First, when we see this relationship as it unfolds, we see that Moses is granted access to speak with the Pharaoh on multiple occasions. The high regard that Moses had with the Pharaoh's officials helped to keep an open door to stand before the Pharaoh. We see an ongoing relationship. And with the duration of the plagues, we even see the Pharaoh requesting for Moses to be brought in before him. It's important for us to see this ongoing dynamic. It's important for us to see this relationship between Moses and the Pharaoh. For if we look close enough, we can see this level of concern and deep affection and care, even with this familial tension. And it is true that there is a wall of hostility. We can see and recognize this wall of hostility constructed by the hardness of the Pharaoh's heart, put in place perhaps by his view of an Egyptian nationalism and racist ideology and stubborn pride. Pharaoh was determined to keep his narrow-mindedness in place. Anything else would be an abandonment to everything that he held dear. It would be a loss of self, a loss of who he was, an abandonment of his roots and his heritage. It would be an abandonment to his values and principles. In the face of truth, the Pharaoh would rather choose falsehood willingly than die on the blade of truth, on the altar of truth which was before him. His war was in trying to hold on to this faulty belief system. The evidence had shown throughout all the different plagues that had come upon him and the Egyptians that their gods were weak, silent, and powerless against the mighty God of the Hebrews. Everything that Pharaoh held dear was being destroyed before his eyes. And yet Pharaoh clinged to his beliefs, not wishing to concede. He would rather die than acknowledge the primacy of the God of Moses and the Hebrews. He would rather die on the mountain of old beliefs than to go along with the winds of change. The fact that Pharaoh is so set and stuck in his ways deeply concerns Moses. Time and time again, Moses confronts the Pharaoh, plague after plague, and we see that the Pharaoh does not budge, he does not change nor concede. The Pharaoh watches as the power of Yahweh is displayed in the land. He thinks that Egypt can withstand the storm and match God's power. The people all around the Pharaoh begin recognizing the futility in going against the Hebrews' God. The Pharaoh's own magicians say to the Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God," and are unable to match his abilities. His own officials plead with him to concede and give Moses what he wants so that the plagues will stop. They appeal to the Pharaoh's reason, begging him to see the ruin of Egypt. Yet all of this is not enough. It wasn't enough to just appeal to the mind and reason of the Pharaoh. The message had to go much deeper. The message had to reach the Pharaoh's heart. And this is where we begin to see the importance of the relationship between Moses and Pharaoh. The importance of the messenger and the receiver. Who are you a messenger to? Friend, who are you a messenger to? You know, you may be the one that God is using to reach someone with His message. The dynamic is one of great importance. Relationship can factor into delivering the message. Because you have been growing and developing a relationship with someone, it may act as a softener to soften the individual's heart so that the seed, the message, can be planted and take root. Never underestimate the value and the importance of a growing relationship. God may just be using that to open the door for the opportunity to deliver His message. And you may be that individual that God is using to deliver His message to that particular person. And we can also see that when difficult times arise, when trials and tribulations come, that they can be the catalyst. A time when a person is more receptive to hearing and obeying and listening and responding to the message. We see the plagues come one after the other, and Pharaoh continues to refuse to respond to the message. Though he refuses, he can't ignore the fact of all that is occurring around him. You know, we never know how much it will take for a person to respond, but God does. God knows what it will take. We see this relationship between Moses and the Pharaoh. Moses is persistent. He does not give up. He does not give up on the Pharaoh. He continues to confront the Pharaoh and continues to carry the message. He also knows when to respond and deliver God's message and when to walk away and allow God to do His work, to allow room for God to work on an individual. God has ways of reaching an individual that is beyond our own abilities. We should also allow for room, allow space for God to work in an individual's life. Notice too that Moses would return to Pharaoh when requested. Pharaoh would request prayer and forgiveness. Pharaoh would cry out for relief. We too, friends, should take the short wins, or as short-lived as they may be. Maybe you'll see someone progressing and maybe they'll regress. Maybe they'll take a couple steps forward and then a couple steps back. Take the short wins, as short-lived as they might be. They just might be the small cracks in the hard earth of the person's heart to let the gentle rain of God's goodness pour in and saturate the soil. The Pharaoh's openness was short-lived, and nothing came about. But that did not prevent Moses from continuing to have those conversations with him and deliver the Lord's message. The message of an Exodus, bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, leading them to Yahweh to worship. I pray that this message has been a blessing to you, and I hope and pray that you have a blessed rest of your week. And until next time, bye-bye.